Harvest Moon Hayride. Two rival farmers fight over the best pumpkin patch but end up sharing cider under a glowing moon. Before we get to our women-loving women story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see more like this. And now, it's time for Harvest Moon Hayride. Harvest Moon Hayride. The October wind carried the scent of dying leaves and wood smoke across Millfield Valley as Angela Martinez stepped out of her rusted pickup truck, her work boots crunching on the gravel driveway. She pulled her denim overalls higher on her shoulders and surveyed the sprawling pumpkin patch that had been in her family for 3 generations. The sight should have filled her with pride, but instead, her jaw tightened as she spotted the weathered wooden sign across the dirt road, Hollow Creek Farm, Premium Pumpkins and Fall Festivities. Emily Chen's operation had been a thorn in Angela's side since the blonde had moved to the valley 2 years ago with her fancy agricultural degree and city money. Where Angela's farm was all function over form, practical rows of bright orange pumpkins stretching toward the treeline, Emily's place looked like something from a magazine spread, complete with hay bale decorations arranged just so and a red barn that had been painted within the last decade. "Morning, neighbor." Emily's voice drifted across the narrow country road, sweet as honey and twice as sticky. Angela looked up to see her rival standing at the edge of her property, blonde hair catching the early sunlight like spun gold, her plaid shirt somehow managing to look both practical and perfectly fitted. Angela raised her hand in what could generously be called a wave. "Emily." The name came out flat, businesslike. "Gorgeous day for the harvest, isn't it?" Emily continued, her smile never wavering despite Angela's cool reception. "I was just thinking how lucky we both are to have such prime real estate for pumpkin growing." Prime real estate. The phrase made Angela's teeth clench. Emily might have her pristine barn and Instagram-worthy displays, but Angela had soil that had been nurtured by 3 generations of Martinez hands. She had roots here that went deeper than Emily's shallow city transplant understanding could fathom. "Luck's got nothing to do with it," Angela replied, turning her attention back to her truck bed full of supplies. "Some of us have been working this land since before it was trendy." The dig hit its mark. Angela caught the brief flicker of hurt that crossed Emily's features, but the blonde recovered quickly, her smile returning with what looked like genuine warmth. "You're absolutely right," Emily said, surprising Angela with the concession. "I have so much to learn from farmers like you. Your family's techniques are legendary around here." Angela paused, a 50-pound bag of fertilizer halfway out of her truck. Was Emily being sincere, or was this some kind of strategy? In 2 years of polite but pointed competition, the woman had never openly acknowledged Angela's expertise. "That's..." Angela cleared her throat. "That's not what I expected you to say." Emily laughed, a sound like wind chimes on a summer evening. "I know we've gotten off on the wrong foot, Angela. Or maybe I got off on the wrong foot. I didn't mean to come in here and disrupt things. I just wanted to grow something beautiful." For a moment, Angela found herself studying Emily's face, really looking at her for the first time in months. There were calluses on her hands that hadn't been there when she'd first arrived, dirt under her nails that spoke of honest work. The soft edges that had screamed, "City girl," had been worn away by 2 seasons of early mornings and backbreaking labor. "Your pumpkins are good," Angela admitted grudgingly. "Better than I thought they'd be." High praise from Angela Martinez, Emily said, and there was something almost shy in her expression. "That means more to me than you know." The moment stretched between them, fragile as spider silk in the morning dew. Then Angela's practical nature reasserted itself, and she hefted the fertilizer bag onto her shoulder. "I've got work to do," she said, not unkindly but firmly. "This patch won't tend itself." "Of course," Emily said, stepping back. "I should get to my own work too. The pumpkin festival's only 3 weeks away." The mention of Millfield's annual pumpkin festival brought the competitive tension flooding back. Every year, local farms competed for the coveted Best Pumpkin Patch award, a title Angela's family had held for 15 consecutive years until Emily's arrival. Last year, Emily had placed second, close enough to make Angela's victory feel less like destiny and more like a fight. "May the best farm win," Angela said, shouldering past Emily toward her fields. May the best farm win, Emily echoed softly behind her. As Angela walked away, she told herself the flutter in her stomach was just pre-competition nerves, nothing more. She had a legacy to protect, a family name to honor. There was no room for whatever Emily Chen was making her feel with those bright eyes and unexpected compliments. But as she began her morning rounds, checking each vine for signs of disease or pest damage, Angela found her gaze drifting across the road more often than she cared to admit. Emily moved through her own patch with surprising grace for someone who'd grown up in the suburbs of Sacramento, her hands gentle as she examined each pumpkin for readiness. The sight stirred something in Angela's chest that she quickly buried under layers of family duty and competitive determination. This was war, even if the battlefield smelled like autumn leaves and the enemy looked like sunshine made manifest. By noon, the October sun had climbed high enough to make Angela grateful for the wide brim of her old straw hat. She was deep in the eastern section of her patch, where the largest pumpkins grew fat and content in the rich soil, when she heard the rumble of an engine that didn't belong to any vehicle she knew. A sleek silver pickup truck pulled into Emily's driveway, nothing like the battered workhorses that most farmers drove. Angela straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead as she watched a man in an expensive suit climb out, followed by a woman with a clipboard and a measuring tape. Judges. Angela's heart sank. The preliminary judging for the pumpkin festival wasn't supposed to happen for another 2 weeks, but there was no mistaking the official bearing of the two visitors. Somehow, Emily had gotten them to come early for a private preview. Angela dropped her pruning shears and strode toward the road, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. If Emily thought she could gain an advantage through political maneuvering, she had another thing coming. "Excuse me," Angela called out as she reached the edge of Emily's property. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Angela Martinez from Martinez Family Farm." She gestured toward her own patch with barely controlled irritation. The man in the suit turned, his expression politely professional. "Marcus Webb, from the State Agricultural Department. This is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Kim. We're here doing some preliminary soil testing for the University Extension Program." Soil testing. Not festival judges after all. Angela felt heat creep up her neck as she realized her mistake, but Emily's voice cut through her embarrassment. "Angela, I'm so glad you came over," Emily said, appearing at her elbow like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "I was just telling Marcus and Sarah about your family's sustainable farming practices. They'd love to hear about your composting system." Angela blinked, caught off guard by Emily's generous redirection. The blonde could have let her stand there looking foolish, could have made a joke about paranoid neighbors jumping to conclusions. Instead, she'd turned Angela's defensive interruption into an opportunity to showcase her expertise. "Your composting system?" Dr. Kim looked genuinely interested. "We're always looking for innovative approaches to soil enrichment." Despite herself, Angela found her professional pride taking over. "It's nothing fancy," she said, though her voice warmed as she spoke about her work. "Just 3 generations of trial and error. We use a combination of food scraps, manure from local livestock, and crop residue in a rotating bin system. The key is maintaining the right carbon-to-nitrogen ratio and turning it regularly to ensure proper decomposition." Marcus made notes on his tablet while Dr. Kim nodded approvingly. "And you've been using this method for how long?" "My grandfather started it in the 60s, but we've refined the process over the years. Last soil test showed organic matter content of nearly 8%, which is pretty good for this region." "That's excellent," Dr. Kim said. "Emily mentioned you might be willing to participate in our case study on sustainable farming practices in small rural communities." Angela shot a surprised look at Emily, who was studying her boots with sudden intensity. "She did? I hope you don't mind," Emily said quickly. "I know how passionate you are about sustainable agriculture, and I thought your methods deserved recognition beyond just our little valley." The sincerity in Emily's voice hit Angela like a physical blow. Here was her supposed rival, actively promoting Angela's work to state officials, passing up an opportunity to shine in favor of highlighting her neighbor's achievements. Angela cleared her throat. "I'd be honored to participate." They spent another hour discussing composting techniques, crop rotation schedules, and integrated pest management strategies. Angela found herself relaxing despite her earlier suspicions, falling into the familiar rhythm of talking shop with fellow agriculture enthusiasts. Emily contributed thoughtfully to the conversation, asking questions that showed she'd been paying attention to Angela's methods even as they'd maintained their polite distance. When Marcus and Dr. Kim finally left, promising to be in touch about the case study, Angela found herself alone with Emily at the edge of the pumpkin patch. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the rows, and somewhere in the distance, a tractor hummed a steady mechanical lullaby. "Thank you," Angela said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Emily shrugged, but Angela caught the pleased flush that colored her cheeks. "Your composting system really is impressive. I've been trying to figure out how you get such consistent results." "You could have asked." "Could I?" Emily's question was gentle, but it held a note of challenge. "We haven't exactly been collaborative neighbors." Angela had the grace to look ashamed. "That's on me. I thought." She trailed off, unsure how to explain 2 years of defensive hostility without sounding petty. "You thought I was some city girl playing farmer with daddy's money," Emily finished for her, not without humor. "Something like that." Angela's admission came out rougher than she intended. "Was I wrong?" Emily considered the question seriously. "Partly wrong, partly right. I did grow up in the city, and I did use family money to buy this place. But it wasn't Daddy's money, it was mine. I spent 10 years as a software engineer before I burned out and decided to try growing something other than code." "Software engineer?" Angela couldn't hide her surprise. "Database architecture, specifically. Very glamorous stuff." Emily's smile was self-deprecating. "I had a corner office and a 6-figure salary and absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Then my grandmother died and left me her life savings, and I decided to take a leap." The vulnerability in Emily's confession shifted something fundamental in Angela's chest. This wasn't the story of a dilettante with too much money and too little sense. This was someone who'd given up everything safe and familiar to chase a dream that might fail spectacularly. "That's..." Angela searched for the right words. "That's incredibly brave." "Or incredibly stupid," Emily said with a laugh. "The jury's still out." "No," Angela said firmly. "Brave. Definitely brave. I've never lived anywhere but this valley. I can't imagine starting over somewhere completely new." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the competitive tension that had defined their relationship dissolving like morning mist. For the first time, Angela allowed herself to really see Emily, not as a threat to her family's legacy, but as a person who'd risked everything to build something beautiful. "Your pumpkins really are good," Angela said again, but this time the admission came without reluctance. "Yours are better," Emily replied. "But I'm learning." Angela found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in Emily's presence. Maybe I could show you a few things. About soil preparation, or pest control, or..." "I'd like that," Emily said quickly. "I'd like that a lot." The sun was beginning its descent toward the western hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Around them, both pumpkin patches glowed in the golden light, the fruits of months of labor ready for harvest. Angela felt something ease in her chest that she hadn't even realized was tight. "Want to see something?" she found herself asking. Emily nodded eagerly, and Angela led her toward the back corner of the Martinez property, where the pumpkins grew largest and the vines stretched thick as a man's wrist across the dark earth. "This is our prize section," Angela explained, stopping beside a massive pumpkin that had to weigh close to 200 pounds. "My great-grandfather planted the first seeds here in 1952. Same soil, same corner of the field, same family techniques passed down through 3 generations." Emily crouched beside the giant pumpkin, her hands hovering just above its perfect orange surface. "It's magnificent. I've never seen one this size." "She'll probably take the blue ribbon at the festival," Angela said with quiet pride. "If I can get her there without her splitting." "She?" Angela felt heat creep up her neck. I know it's silly, but the really special ones, they feel like they have personalities. This one's been a fighter from the start, survived an early frost, a bout with squash bugs, and a week without rain in August. She's earned her pronoun. Emily's smile was radiant. That's not silly at all. I talk to my plants too. I figure they listen better than most people. Do they talk back? Sometimes. Mostly they complain about the weather. Angela laughed, a real, genuine laugh that surprised them both. When had she last laughed with someone who understood the peculiar intimacies of farming, the way a person could fall in love with dirt and seeds and the miracle of things growing? I should get back, Emily said reluctantly as the sun touched the horizon. Evening chores won't do themselves. Right. Me too. But Angela didn't move, and neither did Emily. They stood in the gathering dusk, surrounded by the quiet abundance of the harvest season, and Angela felt the strange sensation of a door opening inside her chest. Angela? Emily's voice was soft, almost hesitant. Yeah? I'm glad we talked today. Really glad. Me too, Angela admitted, and meant it more than she'd expected. They parted ways as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, each returning to their own side of the road. But as Angela fed her chickens and checked the barn one last time before bed, she found herself glancing toward the soft glow of Emily's porch light. For 2 years, that light had seemed like a challenge, a reminder of an outsider's intrusion into her family's domain. Tonight, it looked almost welcoming. Angela shook her head, trying to dispel the dangerous thoughts taking root in her mind. The pumpkin festival was still 3 weeks away. Emily was still her competition. And Angela still had a 15-year winning streak to protect. But as she climbed the steps to her own front porch, Angela couldn't quite shake the memory of Emily's smile, or the way her eyes had lit up when she talked about learning something new. Some competitions, Angela found herself thinking, might be more complicated than simply winning or losing. The thought followed her into sleep, along with the scent of autumn air and the distant sound of Emily's evening chores carrying on the wind. Underscore 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 underscore. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with the kind of blue sky brightness that made everything look like a postcard. Angela was up before sunrise, as always, moving through her morning routine with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing the same tasks for 20-odd years. Feed the chickens, check the water systems, walk the perimeter of the patch looking for overnight damage from deer or rabbits. She was examining a section of fence that looked like it had been tested by something larger than a rabbit when Emily's voice made her jump. Morning, neighbor. Beautiful day, isn't it? Angela turned to find Emily approaching with 2 steaming cups in her hands, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun that somehow managed to look effortlessly perfect. She was wearing different overalls today. These ones actually fit her properly instead of hanging loose like hand-me-downs, and Angela tried not to notice how well they suited her. Coffee? Emily offered, extending one of the cups. Angela accepted it gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. The coffee was good. Really good, with hints of cinnamon and something else she couldn't identify. Cardamom, Emily said, catching Angela's questioning look. Old family recipe. My grandmother always said coffee should be an experience, not just caffeine delivery. It's perfect. Angela took another sip, surprised by how much she meant it. Thank you. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun paint the pumpkin patches in shades of gold and orange. Angela had always loved this time of morning, when the world felt fresh and full of possibility, but sharing it with Emily added a dimension she hadn't expected. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, Emily began, her voice carefully casual. About showing me some techniques. I know we're technically competitors, but... Angela prompted when Emily trailed off. But I think I'd rather learn from someone who actually knows what they're doing than keep making the same mistakes over and over. Emily's smile was rueful. Pride's expensive when you're trying to make a living off the land. Angela found herself nodding. What did you want to know? Everything. Emily laughed at Angela's raised eyebrow. Okay, maybe start smaller. I'm having trouble with my composting system. It's not breaking down evenly, and some sections smell like they're going anaerobic. Too much nitrogen, not enough carbon, Angela diagnosed immediately. And probably not enough air circulation. Come on, I'll show you. They spent the next hour in Angela's composting area, Emily taking notes on her phone as Angela explained the intricacies of carbon-nitrogen ratios, proper turning schedules, and moisture management. It felt strange to be sharing family secrets with her competitor, but also oddly right. Knowledge hoarded helped no one, and Emily's eagerness to learn reminded Angela of herself at 25, hungry for any wisdom that might help her coax better crops from the earth. The key is patience, Angela said, turning a section of rich, dark compost with her pitchfork. You can't rush decomposition. It happens on nature's timeline, not yours. Patience, Emily repeated, making another note. Not exactly my strong suit. No? Angela glanced at her sideways. You seem pretty patient to me. You've been working this land for 2 years without giving up. Some days it's been close, Emily admitted. Especially that first year when I lost half my crop to squash borers because I didn't know what to look for. Angela winced in sympathy. Every farmer had stories like that, expensive lessons learned through failure and heartbreak. What kept you going? Emily considered the question, her fingers absently stroking the handle of her coffee cup. Stubbornness, mostly. And I don't know, there's something about growing things that feels like magic, even when it's going wrong. Especially when it's going wrong. Even when you're losing money and sleep and questioning every decision you've ever made. Even then. Emily's smile was soft, almost dreamy. There's something about putting a seed in the ground and having it become food, or beauty, or both. It feels like participating in something bigger than myself. Angela felt something shift in her chest, a recognition, a resonance. This was exactly why she'd never been able to imagine leaving the valley, why the thought of selling the farm and moving to the city made her feel physically ill. Emily understood, in a way that most people didn't, the peculiar calling of agriculture. You get it, Angela said quietly. Get what? Why we do this. Even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make financial sense, even when there are easier ways to make a living. Angela gestured toward their twin patches, heavy with the promise of harvest. You get why it matters. Emily's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd understand that about me. I'm starting to. They worked together for another hour, moving from composting to soil preparation to pest identification. Emily was a quick learner, asking smart questions and making connections that showed she'd been thinking seriously about farming techniques even if she hadn't always known how to implement them. Your turn, Emily said as they finished examining a section of Angela's squash plants for signs of vine borers. What do you want to know about my operation? Angela hesitated. Asking for help felt uncomfortably vulnerable, especially from someone she'd been treating as competition. But Emily's open expression and morning of generous knowledge sharing made it hard to maintain her defensive walls. Your marketing, Angela said finally. You get twice the foot traffic I do during harvest season, and I know it's not just because your pumpkins are prettier. Emily laughed. They are prettier, though. You focus on growing the best possible produce, I focus on creating an experience people want to share with their friends. How do you mean? Come see. Emily led Angela across the road to her own property, and Angela tried to see it through fresh eyes. Where Angela's farm was purely functional. Neat rows of vegetables, a practical barn, efficient but unglamorous infrastructure, Emily's place looked like it had been designed for Instagram. Hay bales were arranged in artistic clusters, perfect for photos. A wooden sign offered, pick your own pumpkins, $8 per pound, in charming hand-lettered script. Mason jars filled with sunflowers and autumn leaves decorated a rustic table where customers could weigh their purchases. It's all about the story, Emily explained, leading Angela through her setup. People don't just want pumpkins, they want to feel connected to where their food comes from. They want to take pictures they'll look back on in 20 years and remember the perfect fall day they spent at a pumpkin patch. Angela examined the details with growing appreciation. Everything looked effortless and natural, but she could see the careful thought behind each element. The hay bales were positioned to frame the best views of the patch. The sunflowers were chosen for their photogenic qualities as much as their beauty. Even the wooden crates used for displaying smaller pumpkins were weathered to exactly the right degree of rustic charm. "This is brilliant," Angela admitted. "I never thought about the experience part. Want to see the real secret weapon?" Emily's eyes sparkled with mischief as she led Angela toward the barn. Inside, Angela found herself staring at a setup that belonged more in a commercial kitchen than a farm building. Stainless steel prep tables, industrial mixers, and a commercial-grade oven took up most of the space. "I make pumpkin everything," Emily explained proudly. "Bread, muffins, cookies, soup, even pumpkin spice lattes. People come for the pumpkins, but they leave with bags full of baked goods and the promise to come back next week for more." "You're not just growing pumpkins," Angela realized. "You're running a whole agritourism operation." "Exactly. The margins on raw produce are terrible, but people will pay premium prices for experiences and artisanal products." Emily opened one of the industrial fridges to reveal trays of perfectly golden pumpkin muffins. "Try one." Angela bit into the offered muffin and had to suppress a groan of pleasure. It was everything a pumpkin muffin should be, moist, spiced just right, with a tender crumb that spoke of genuine skill in the kitchen. "This is incredible," she said through a mouthful of muffin. "No wonder you get so much repeat business." "Family recipe," Emily said with obvious pride. "My grandmother was a baker before she married my grandfather. She taught me that food is love made visible." Angela found herself studying Emily with new eyes. The woman wasn't just a weekend farmer playing with family money, she was a businesswoman who'd identified a market need and built a comprehensive operation to meet it. The baking setup alone represented thousands of dollars in investment, not to mention the time and skill required to perfect the recipes. "I've been thinking about this all wrong," Angela said slowly. "What do you mean?" "I've been treating you like you were trying to put me out of business, when really you're serving a completely different market." Angela looked around the commercial kitchen with growing understanding. "Your customers want an experience. Mine just want the best possible pumpkins." "There's room for both approaches," Emily said gently. "More than room, there's need for both. Some people want to come take Instagram photos and drink pumpkin spice lattes. Others want to buy serious produce from someone who's been perfecting their craft for decades. But we've been competing head-to-head for the same festival award." "Have we?" Emily's question was thoughtful. "Or have we been letting other people frame it as competition when really we're just two different approaches to the same underlying passion?" Angela felt something fundamental shift in her understanding. For 2 years, she'd seen Emily's success as a threat to her own legacy, a sign that traditional farming was being replaced by something shinier and more marketable. But standing in Emily's kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of her neighbor's hard work and genuine skill, Angela could see a different story. Emily wasn't trying to replace anything, she was trying to build something new while honoring something old. The pumpkins were still grown with care and attention, still nurtured from seed to harvest with the kind of patience that couldn't be faked. The difference was in presentation, in understanding that modern customers wanted more than just a transaction. "I owe you an apology," Angela said quietly. "No, you." "Yes, I do." Angela cut off Emily's protest. "I've been treating you like an enemy when you've never been anything but a good neighbor. That's on me, not you." Emily's smile was soft and understanding. "I haven't exactly made it easy. I came in here thinking I knew everything, probably came across as pretty arrogant. Maybe we both had some learning to do. Maybe we did." They stood in the warm kitchen, surrounded by the scents of cinnamon and baking bread, and Angela felt the last of her defensive walls crumble. Emily wasn't her enemy, never had been. She was just another person trying to make something beautiful grow in the world, and if she happened to do it while looking like a magazine cover model and smelling like vanilla and sage, well, that wasn't exactly a crime. Want to see the rest of the operation? Emily asked. I've got a whole setup for making pumpkin soup, and a dehydrator for pumpkin chips. Angela found herself nodding eagerly. I'd love to. They spent the rest of the morning exploring Emily's various enterprises, from her small batch canning operation to her carefully curated selection of decorative gourds. Angela asked questions, offered suggestions, and gradually began to see how the two farms might complement rather than compete with each other. By noon, they'd worked up a serious appetite, and Emily insisted on making lunch from ingredients grown on both properties. Angela found herself sitting at Emily's kitchen table, eating the most delicious pumpkin soup she'd ever tasted while Emily chattered about plans for expanding her baking operation next year. I've been thinking about adding classes, Emily said, ladling more soup into Angela's bowl. Bread making, canning, maybe even basic gardening for people who want to start growing their own vegetables. That's a great idea, Angela said, and meant it. There's definitely interest in that kind of thing around here. You think? I wasn't sure if there'd be enough demand in a rural area. Are you kidding? Half the women in town have been trying to get their daughters interested in traditional skills for years. You'd probably have a waiting list. Emily's face lit up with excitement. Would you? I mean, if you weren't too busy, would you consider co-teaching some of the gardening classes? You know so much more about soil and plant health than I do. The offer surprised Angela into silence. Teaching classes with Emily would mean working closely together, spending hours side by side, sharing not just knowledge but space and time and probably a lot of laughter if this morning was any indication. Angela cleared her throat. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. Really? Really? Angela found herself smiling. It sounds like fun. They finished lunch in comfortable conversation, discussing everything from crop rotation schedules to favorite varieties of winter squash. Angela couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed someone's company this much, or felt this comfortable talking shop with another farmer. As she prepared to leave, Emily walked her to the edge of the property, both women reluctant to end the day's easy companionship. Thank you for this morning, Emily said. For sharing your knowledge, for giving me a chance. Thank you for the coffee. And the muffin. And the soup. And for not making me feel like an idiot for misjudging you so badly. We both made assumptions, Emily said diplomatically. Maybe. But I'm the one who's been hostile for 2 years. They paused at the road that divided their properties, neither quite ready to cross back to their own side. Angela? Emily's voice was soft, almost hesitant. Tomorrow's supposed to be perfect weather for harvesting. If you want, we could work our patches together. Make it less of a chore and more of more fun. Angela felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. I'd like that, she heard herself saying. I'd like that very much. Emily's smile was brilliant. Great. I'll bring coffee. I'll bring my truck. For hauling. Perfect. They stood there for another moment, grinning at each other like teenagers planning their first date, before Angela forced herself to take a step backward. I should. She gestured vaguely toward her own farm. Right. Me too. But neither of them moved, caught in the strange gravity of a connection neither had expected to find. Tomorrow, then, Angela said finally. Tomorrow, Emily agreed. Angela made herself turn and walk away, but she could feel Emily watching her go, and the knowledge sent warmth spreading through her chest. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. As she reached her own porch, Angela looked back to find Emily still standing at the edge of her property, golden hair catching the afternoon sunlight. Their eyes met across the road, and Emily raised her hand in a small wave that Angela returned without hesitation. For the first time in 2 years, the road between their farms felt less like a boundary and more like a bridge. The next morning arrived with a crispness that promised perfect harvest weather, cool enough to work without overheating, warm enough that fingers wouldn't go numb handling pumpkin stems. Angela was up before dawn, moving through her chores with unusual energy, checking her appearance in the bathroom mirror more times than she cared to admit. She told herself she was just excited about getting the harvest done efficiently, maybe learning some new techniques from Emily's operation. The fact that she'd changed shirts twice and spent extra time working product through her curls was purely practical. She wanted to look professional, that was all. The sound of Emily's truck pulling into the driveway sent Angela's pulse racing in a way that definitely wasn't professional. Morning. Emily called out, emerging from her vehicle with 2 travel mugs and a bag that smelled like heaven. I brought coffee and... She held up the bag with obvious pride, fresh pumpkin bread. Angela accepted her coffee gratefully, breathing in the familiar scent of Emily's cardamom blend. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Emily's smile was warm and genuine. Partners should contribute equally, right? Partners. The word sent a little thrill through Angela's chest that she tried very hard to ignore. They started with Angela's prize section, the area where her largest pumpkins had been growing all season. Emily proved to be an excellent harvesting partner, strong enough to lift the heavy specimens but gentle enough not to damage the delicate stems. She also had an eye for quality that surprised Angela. After just one demonstration of how to check for ripeness and potential problems, Emily was spotting issues that even experienced farmers sometimes missed. This one's got soft spot developing on the underside, Emily called out, crouched beside a particularly large pumpkin. Still good for carving, but probably shouldn't go in long-term storage. Angela came over to check Emily's assessment and found herself standing closer than strictly necessary, close enough to catch the scent of Emily's shampoo under the morning air. You're right. Good eye. I had a good teacher, Emily said, looking up at Angela with an expression that made Angela's breath catch. They worked in comfortable rhythm, loading Angela's truck with the fruits of months of careful tending. Emily kept up a steady stream of conversation that made the physical labor feel less like work and more like play. She asked thoughtful questions about Angela's techniques, shared stories about her own farming mishaps, and somehow made even the mundane task of checking pumpkins for blemishes feel engaging. Your turn, Angela said as they loaded the last of her harvest. Let's see how your crop turned out. Emily's patch was smaller but incredibly well maintained, with pumpkins that might not have been quite as large as Angela's but were perfectly shaped and beautifully colored. Angela found herself impressed despite her initial assumptions about Emily's farming skills. These are gorgeous, she said, running her hand over a particularly symmetrical pumpkin. Your customers are going to love them. Think they'll do okay at the festival? Emily asked, and Angela caught the hint of nervousness in her voice. Are you kidding? These would win ribbons at any agricultural fair in the state. Angela straightened up, suddenly remembering that they were, technically, still competitors. Not that I'm trying to psych myself out or anything. Emily laughed. Right. We're supposed to be mortal enemies, aren't we? Mortal enemies, Angela agreed solemnly. I should probably sabotage your display somehow. And I should steal all your farming secrets. Which I've conveniently spent the last 2 days sharing with you. I'm a master of psychological warfare, Emily said with mock seriousness. I've clearly lulled you into a false sense of security with coffee and baked goods. Diabolical, Angela agreed, fighting back laughter. They grinned at each other across Emily's pumpkin patch, and Angela felt something shift in her chest, something warm and bright and completely at odds with 2 years of competitive tension. You know what? Angela said impulsively. Forget the competition. Let's just focus on getting both our crops ready for the festival and let the judges decide what they decide. Really? Emily's smile was radiant. You mean it? I mean it. We're both good farmers, we both deserve recognition, and honestly. Angela gestured toward Emily's beautiful pumpkins. I think Millfield is lucky to have both our farms. Emily's expression grew soft and wondering. I never thought I'd hear you say that. I never thought I'd mean it, Angela admitted. But I do. They finished harvesting Emily's patch in record time, their easy cooperation making light work of what was usually a backbreaking solo endeavor. By early afternoon, both trucks were loaded with pumpkins ready for the festival, and they'd accomplished more together than either would have managed alone. Lunch? Emily suggested as they secured the last tie-down strap. I've got leftover soup, and I think we've earned it. Angela found herself nodding before she'd consciously decided to accept. Something about Emily's presence made every invitation feel natural, every moment together feel like exactly where she was supposed to be. They ate on Emily's back porch, overlooking both pumpkin patches with the satisfaction of work well done. The conversation flowed easily from farming techniques to childhood memories to dreams for the future, and Angela discovered that Emily was not only beautiful and talented but genuinely funny, with a dry sense of humor that perfectly complemented Angela's own tendency towards sarcasm. So what made you choose pumpkins specifically? Angela asked, settling back in her chair with a contented sigh. Honestly? They're just so optimistic, Emily said, gazing out at her patch with obvious affection. Think about it, you plant these tiny seeds in the spring when everything's muddy and gray, and by fall you've got these enormous, bright orange symbols of abundance and celebration. There's something hopeful about that. Angela found herself studying Emily's profile, the way afternoon sunlight caught in her blonde hair and highlighted the strong line of her jaw. That's a beautiful way to think about it. What about you? Why keep growing them when you could focus entirely on other crops? Angela considered the question seriously. Tradition, partly. My family's been growing pumpkins since before I was born. But also... She paused, searching for the right words. There's something magical about harvest time. The whole community comes together, families make memories, kids get excited about carving jack-o'-lanterns. We're not just growing food, we're growing joy. See? Emily turned to face her fully, eyes bright with understanding. That's exactly what I mean about optimism. We're in the happiness business. The happiness business, Angela repeated, liking the sound of it. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching clouds drift across the October sky. Angela felt more relaxed than she had in months, maybe years. The constant low-level stress of competition had been replaced by something warmer, more sustaining. Angela? Emily's voice was soft, almost hesitant. Would you like to have dinner tomorrow night? I mean, a real dinner. Not just sharing soup on the porch. Emily's cheeks had gone slightly pink. I'd like to cook for you. Angela's heart did something complicated in her chest, a flutter, a skip, a sudden acceleration that left her slightly breathless. This felt like more than neighborly friendship, more than professional collaboration. This felt like the beginning of something that could change everything. I'd love to, she heard herself saying. What can I bring? Just yourself. Emily's smile was radiant. I'll take care of everything else. As Angela drove home that evening, her truck filled with pumpkins and her head filled with thoughts of Emily, she found herself humming for the first time in recent memory. The October evening was perfect, crisp air, brilliant sunset, the satisfying ache of muscles well used in honest work. But it was more than just the weather or the successful harvest making her feel so light. For 2 years, she'd carried the weight of defending her family's legacy against what she'd seen as an existential threat. Tonight, that weight was gone, replaced by anticipation for whatever was growing between her and the woman across the road. Her phone buzzed with a text message as she pulled into her own driveway. Thank you for today. Best harvest partner I've ever had. Emily. Angela found herself grinning as she typed back. Thank you for the coffee and company. See you tomorrow night. The response came quickly. Can't wait. Neither could Angela, though she was trying not to examine too closely why the prospect of dinner with Emily felt so much more significant than a simple meal between neighbors. She was in trouble, Angela realized as she unloaded her harvest. The kind of trouble that started with admiring a neighbor's farming techniques and ended with, well, she wasn't quite ready to think about where it might end. But as she settled into bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of the countryside and thinking about Emily's laugh, Angela found she didn't mind being in trouble. Not if it felt this good. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if October had decided to give them one last gift of summer weather before settling into autumn's chill. Angela stood in front of her bathroom mirror, changing clothes for the third time and wondering when she'd become the kind of person who agonized over dinner outfits. She'd settled on dark jeans and a soft green sweater that brought out her eyes. Casual enough not to seem like she was trying too hard, nice enough to show she'd made an effort. Her curls were cooperating for once, falling in loose spirals around her shoulders, and she'd even managed to scrub most of the dirt from under her fingernails. The walk across the road to Emily's house felt both eternal and instantaneous. Angela found herself noticing details she'd somehow missed in 2 years of passing by, the way Emily had planted native wildflowers along her driveway, the hand-carved wind chimes that sang softly in the evening breeze, the warm light spilling from windows that made the farmhouse look like something from a magazine cover. Emily answered the door wearing a sundress that should have looked out of place on a farm but somehow looked perfectly right on her. The soft yellow fabric complemented her blonde hair and sun-kissed skin, and Angela had to remind herself to breathe. "Hi," Emily said, her smile warm and slightly nervous. "You look beautiful." "So do you," Angela replied, and meant it more than she'd expected to. Emily led her into a kitchen that smelled like heaven, herbs and garlic and something rich and complex that made Angela's mouth water. The farmhouse interior was as thoughtfully appointed as everything else Emily touched, with vintage furniture that looked genuinely lived in rather than artificially distressed, and mason jars full of flowers from the garden on every available surface. "Wine?" Emily offered, gesturing toward an open bottle of red wine breathing on the counter. "It's from a vineyard about 50 miles north. I thought we should keep things local." Angela accepted the offered glass gratefully, taking a sip of what turned out to be excellent Pinot Noir. "This is wonderful. And something smells incredible." "Braised short ribs with vegetables from both our gardens," Emily said with obvious pride. "I figured if we're celebrating the harvest, we should actually eat what we've grown." They moved to the living room while dinner finished cooking, settling onto a comfortable couch that faced windows overlooking both pumpkin patches. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, and Angela felt the last of her nervousness fade away in the face of Emily's easy hospitality. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Emily said, curling up on her end of the couch with her wine glass. Angela considered the question. "Something you don't know? I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid." "Really? What changed?" "My dad had a heart attack when I was 16, Angela said quietly. "Someone needed to help keep the farm running, and I was the only kid who'd shown any interest in agriculture. By the time he recovered, I'd fallen in love with farming and couldn't imagine doing anything else." "Do you ever regret it?" Angela shook her head. "Not for a minute. I think I was meant to do this work, even if I took a roundabout path to figuring that out." "What about you? Any childhood dreams you abandoned for farming?" Emily laughed. "I was going to be a professional ballet dancer. Spent 10 years in classes, even did some competitions. Then I hit a growth spurt in high school and suddenly I was too tall for most dance partners." Angela tried to imagine Emily in a leotard and pointe shoes, all grace and controlled power. The mental image was surprisingly easy to conjure. "I bet you were good at it." "I loved it. There's something about dance that's similar to farming, actually, all that discipline and practice and patience, working towards something beautiful that might not pay off for years. I never thought of farming as artistic." "Oh, but it is," Emily said, leaning forward with sudden intensity. "Think about the way you plan your crop rotations, or design your composting system, or even arrange your market display. There's definitely an aesthetic element to good farming." Angela found herself nodding. "You're right. I just never thought about it that way." "That's what I love about you," Emily said, then seemed to realize what she'd said and blushed furiously. "I mean, what I appreciate about your approach to farming. You're so instinctive. Like you can feel what the plants need." The compliment sent warmth spreading through Angela's chest. "You make me sound like some kind of plant whisperer. Aren't you?" Emily's smile was soft and genuine. "I've watched you work, Angela. You have a gift. Before Angela could respond, the timer in the kitchen chimed, and Emily jumped up to check on dinner. Angela followed her, ostensibly to help but really because she wasn't ready to lose Emily's company even for a few minutes. The meal was extraordinary, the kind of food that made Angela understand why people got emotional about cooking. Everything had been prepared with obvious care and attention to detail, from the perfectly braised meat to the root vegetables that tasted like concentrated autumn sunshine. "This is incredible," Angela said around a mouthful of the most delicious carrots she'd ever eaten. "Are these from your garden?" "Yours, actually," Emily admitted. "I may have borrowed a few vegetables from your market stand yesterday. I left money in your honor system jar." Angela laughed. "You bought my own vegetables to cook for me?" "I wanted everything to be perfect," Emily said, looking suddenly shy. "And your vegetables are better than mine." The admission was so sincere, so sweetly nervous, that Angela felt something melt in her chest. "Emily, this whole evening is perfect. The food, the wine, the company, all of it." Emily's smile was radiant. "Really? Really?" They lingered over dinner, conversation flowing as easily as the wine. Angela found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone. Funny disasters from her early farming days, family legends about particularly memorable harvests, dreams she'd never quite articulated even to herself about expanding the farm's educational programs. Emily matched her story for story, painting vivid pictures of her corporate days and the gradual realization that she was living someone else's dream instead of her own. Her decision to leave everything familiar behind suddenly seemed even braver to Angela, who'd never lived anywhere but this valley. "Weren't you terrified?" Angela asked as they moved to the porch with the remainder of the wine. "Starting over completely in a place where you didn't know anyone?" "Absolutely terrified," Emily admitted. "But also, liberated. For the first time in my adult life, I was making choices based on what I actually wanted instead of what I thought I was supposed to want." They settled onto the porch swing that faced both their farms, the motion gentle and soothing in the evening air. Angela was hyper-aware of Emily's presence beside her, the warmth of her bare arm just inches away, the scent of her perfume mingling with the night air, the soft sound of her breathing. "I'm glad you stayed," Angela said quietly. "Even when I was being awful to you, I'm glad you didn't give up and leave." "I thought about it," Emily admitted. "Especially after that first pumpkin festival when you barely acknowledged my existence despite us literally sharing a display table." Angela winced at the memory. "I was protecting something that didn't need protecting." "What do you mean?" "I thought if you succeeded, it meant my family's way of farming was obsolete. Like there was only room for one of us to be good at this." Angela took a sip of wine, gathering courage for what she wanted to say next. "But watching you work, learning about your operation, you're not trying to replace anything. You're trying to build something new that honors what came before." Emily turned to face her fully, eyes bright with unshed tears. "That means everything to me, hearing you say that. It's the truth." They swung in comfortable silence for a while, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Angela felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years, the deep satisfaction of a perfect day shared with exactly the right person. "Angela?" Emily's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Yeah? I know this might be moving fast, or inappropriate since we're neighbors, or..." Emily took a shaky breath. "But I really like you. More than like you. And I hope, you might feel the same way." Angela's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment she'd been both hoping for and dreading all evening, the moment when their easy friendship would either transform into something deeper or collapse under the weight of mismatched expectations. "I do," Angela said quietly. "Feel the same way, I mean. I have for a while, actually, I didn't know if you..." "Really?" Emily's smile was brilliant, transforming her entire face. "Really?" Emily reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against Angela's hand. When Angela didn't pull away, Emily threaded their fingers together, and Angela felt the simple contact like electricity running through her entire body. "So what happens now?" Emily asked. Angela considered the question. What did happen now? They were neighbors, competitors, two people who'd spent years misunderstanding each other and were just beginning to figure out how to be friends, let alone whatever this was becoming. I don't know, Angela admitted. But I'd like to find out. Emily's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of Angela's hand. Me too. They sat there holding hands on the porch swing, watching the moon rise over their twin pumpkin patches, and Angela felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and wonderful and slightly terrifying. 3 days ago, Emily had been her rival. Now she was, what? A friend, certainly. Something more, probably. Someone who made Angela's chest feel warm and tight and full of possibility. The festival's next weekend, Emily said eventually. It is. Are you nervous? Angela considered the question seriously. A week ago, she would have been consumed with anxiety about defending her family's 15-year winning streak. Now, with Emily's hand warm in hers and the promise of whatever was growing between them, the competition seemed less important. Not really, she said, surprising herself. Whatever happens, happens. We'll both put our best work forward, and the judges will decide what they decide. Look at you being all zen about competition, Emily teased gently. I have other things on my mind now. Oh? Like what? Angela turned to meet Emily's gaze directly. Like figuring out how to date my neighbor without the whole town gossiping about us. Emily's laugh was pure joy. Let them gossip. I've never cared much about what other people think, and I'm not about to start now. Good, Angela said, leaning closer. Because I think I'm about to do something that will definitely give them something to talk about. What's that? Instead of answering, Angela closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to Emily's in a kiss that was soft and tentative and absolutely perfect. Emily melted into it immediately, her free hand coming up to cup Angela's cheek as they kissed under the harvest moon. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Emily's smile was radiant. Definitely worth gossiping about, she said. Angela laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I should probably head home. We both have early mornings tomorrow. Probably, Emily agreed, but neither of them made any move to separate. They kissed again, longer this time, and Angela felt the last of her reservations dissolve. Whatever complications might arise from dating her neighbor and former rival, whatever challenges they might face as two women in a small rural community, whatever the outcome of next weekend's festival, none of it mattered as much as this moment, this connection, this feeling of having found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. I'll walk you home, Emily said when they finally managed to untangle themselves from each other. It's 50 yards across a dirt road. I'm being a gentleman, Emily said with mock solemnity. Ladies should be escorted home after dates. Is that what this was? A date? The first of many, I hope. Angela felt her heart skip. I hope so too. They walked slowly across the road, hands linked, neither wanting the evening to end. At Angela's front porch, they kissed again, deeper this time, full of promise and possibility. Sweet dreams, Angela Martinez, Emily murmured against her lips. Sweet dreams, Emily Chen. Angela watched from her porch as Emily walked back across the road, turning to wave once before disappearing into her own house. Only then did Angela allow herself to fully process what had just happened. She had a girlfriend. Maybe. Probably. Someone who made her laugh and challenged her thinking and kissed like she meant it. Someone who understood the particular calling of agriculture and wasn't intimidated by Angela's family legacy. Someone beautiful and smart and brave enough to start over in a place where she knew nobody. Angela climbed the steps to her front door, still tasting Emily's kiss on her lips and feeling like she was floating 3 feet off the ground. Through her bedroom window, she could see the light still on in Emily's kitchen, and the sight made her smile. For 2 years, that light had seemed like a challenge. Tonight, it felt like home. End of part 1. Please follow along with the story in part 2.